friend Jay Powell is out here on his day 2 of congressional testimony, softening his stance a little bit, and Bitcoin responding in kind. Let's hear what he had to say a bit earlier today.
We have not made any decision about the March meeting. We're not going to do that until we see the additional data. The larger point, though, is that we're not on a preset path and that we will be guided by the incoming data and the evolving outlook.
So there it is. The orange coin, which was meant to subvert the influence of federal governments everywhere, is responding accordingly and is north of 22,000. Yeah, that's what the orange coin does these days. It responds to Jay Powell's comments about the state of the economy. So I'm going to toss this to Will. Let's get historical here. What do you think about Bitcoin in the macroeconomic context, especially in the wake of these comments from Jerome Powell up on Capitol Hill?
Love it. Yeah. I mean, history kind of repeated itself, right? We've always seen that Bitcoin has been moving in line with any pronouncement from the Federal Reserve. And you might think that that's like a recent trend, but it really isn't, right? So since 2010 or so, we've seen that the Federal Reserve has been moving into quantitative easing. It paused doing that after the Great Recession and sort of just moved into like this 0% interest rate regime where anyone can sort of boot up a business because it's really cheap to get credit. There's a lot of tech startups that got hot. Bitcoin grew up in that environment. It got hot in the environment of tech stocks going to the moon. And then since 2020, when the Fed moved into like this very aggressive posturing due to the COVID pandemic and then the post-recession fears, we've seen Bitcoins be basically lockstep with tech stocks also, right? So whenever the Fed says that we're going to raise interest rates, Bitcoin goes down. It did go down Monday. Tech stocks also go down. Whenever the Fed says they're going to pause and maybe not increase as much, we see things rally. And that's why a lot of people right now think that that 22,000 Bitcoin mark is a little bullish. Some people think it's a bear trap because the Fed has sort of been saying that we're not going to raise much more. We're at about 5%. It's time to pause. But then all of a sudden, the Fed can pivot, right? And we are seeing this right now of Jerome Powell. They said in their earlier comments, hey, we're going to go up. We're going to go up another 50 bips instead of 25 bips. Well, he pivoted. And now he's saying like, hey, we're actually probably going to increase and go even more. And that is catching a lot of these stocks off track, and they're being very volatile in the wake of that. And that's what we've seen with Bitcoin, where it went down a lot yesterday, and now it's kind of going back up. It went up like $200. Tech stocks and the like are doing similar. So very similar, just like from a historical perspective. Jen, I'm going to throw this over to you. Any thoughts on our favorite orange coin this morning?
Well, for me, this is just continues the road to boring story, right? The crypto markets are so closely correlated to the equities market. Will, I think you did a really good job at just giving us the history and laying that down. For me, I wish Adam was on the show today. How do we make sense of what's actually going to happen? If one day we hear one thing and markets react, and then the next day we hear Powell come out and say, actually, no, that we're not even know that's not going to happen or that might not happen. Just we're interpreting his comments as a little bit softer than yesterday's and the markets react. How do we know what's going to happen? Well, I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments on that, or do we just not know? Do we continue to interpret the things in the news and watch the markets go up and down?
Rule number 1 on the hash, don't make a price prediction. We don't do that here, but I will because Crypto Wendy is not on the show today. I think it's anyone's guess, right? Like we have to know what the Fed is going to do in order for like tech stocks or Bitcoin, other cryptos to know like where they're going to trend. The Fed has been saying that they want to get to 5% and then sort of reconsider things based on the facts. And those facts really are unemployment. Do they care if unemployment's higher or lower? Well, they really want unemployment to actually be higher. That shows that the markets are sort of cooling off and inflation is cooling off. They sort of link unemployment and inflation very closely. And so far, unemployment numbers have continued to be very strong, meaning most people are still employed. And the Fed has been looking at that and been like, hey, this doesn't really make sense. If we're in an inflationary environment, then we probably want to see unemployment go up. I think they're going to keep pushing that federal funds rate higher until they see a breaking in unemployment rate, where unemployment actually starts to go back up towards historical norms. Right now, it's below historical norms. And I think for Bitcoin, if you're going to extrapolate from there, that just means like there's probably more pressure on Bitcoin to go down as opposed to up in the short term. But if you're going to make that decision, that's your problem. That's not mine. We do not do financial advice on the hash. Unless it's Wendy's corner, Wendy can give price advice all she wants. Zach, over to you.
Yeah, Will, I really liked your broader historical scope there, right? Like Bitcoin, it is a comment on macroeconomic realities, right? Like Chancellor on the brink of second bailout is literally there in that first mint, right? So the fact that this is sort of founded by and for macroeconomic nerds continues to be a reality, whether it's in a period of quantitative easing or in a period of more aggressive rate hikes, right? So, I think that zooming out to that sort of historical context was really important.